know, I'm speaking with composer Jeff Cardoni, who has scored a wide variety of TV and films over the years, including Disney's adaptation of Where the Red Fern Grows, Just Friends, CSI Miami, The League, Wilfred, among many others. Coming up, Jeff will be scoring The Michael J. Fox Show and the series Full Circle from Neil LaBute. Thanks so much for speaking with me today.
Great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Great. So to start off, what does music mean to you personally, and how did you get into it, and what led to the composing path?
Uh, Music kind of means everything to me. It's kind of an all-encompassing, uh, it just kind of takes over your life. It has
Hmm.
since a really young age. It's been all I really think about. My parents forced me classical piano from age 7 till about 14, I think, and that kind of started me on the course, I guess.
Hmm.
I didn't really appreciate it at the time, so when I got to high school, I bought a guitar and a drum set to kind of rebel, and much to my parents' dismay. But so after college, I spent a few years touring as a guitarist. And in the travels, my band's manager turned out to be a music supervisor out here in LA. So we would come out, several times a year to we did some on camera stuff and we did some showcases. But I kind of got introduced to the world of film music that way, and that kind of changed the course for me in every way. Where I didn't really want to be the band guy anymore,
Right.
and so I moved out here. Took some classes at UCLA and just got the bug and kind of haven't looked back since. That was about 16 years ago.
Oh wow. So I mean, have you did you listen to scores growing up? Were you aware of it, or did it just come kind of like in high school, college age?
Uh, Probably high school is when I really started. I've always just been just consumed music in every form. I've
Right.
kind of just took in all pop music and everything. I used to have this little cassette recorder that I would record things from my parents' stereo. They had all their records. They did have some movie music and a lot of pop music, disco music, everything. But I would just became this, just kind of took it all in, and it's weird. At a really young age, I was always like an ear guy on the piano, where I could sit down and play all these songs just because I just listened so much. And
Hmm.
when you started getting into scores, it was the same thing. Just consuming as much as you possibly can. And I don't remember when it was, but there was a point when, when you first started listening to orchestral music, I feel like you didn't really understand. You listen to a band, you understand the guitar, bass, and drums. And for me, the real breakthrough was when you listen to an orchestral recording and you can hear what was playing what. And once you can decipher that in your head, once you got everything clear, that became just this. The puzzle became kind of unlocked for me, and then it kind of started this whole other, thirst for knowledge and trying to understand what the greats were doing and how it translated to film music. And
Right. Right. So when you start on any project, what about it gets your creative ideas flowing? You know, what inspires you about a project the most and influences your writing the most?
Um, they're all so different,
Hmm.
because with a film, I really try to be traditional and sit at a piano. I force myself to get a piece of manuscript paper and put it in front of me, even if it's the most basic thing. But try to come up with the tune of the film,
Hmm.
away from computers, away from everything else, because I feel like technology is just so there's too much now. Everyone
Yeah.
gets overwhelmed with all these programs, and I'm not a tech guy, and I don't buy the newest stuff, and I think I'd rather just get comfortable with what I have and try to become more creative with what I have, instead of buying the new flavor of the month, whatever the sample of the week is.
Right.
So
Right.
so so a film, I really try to start with piano and melody, even though if it ends up not being anything piano at the end, just to at least there's some kind of musical nugget there, and
Hmm.
it's not just sound. Uh, and I say that, but some stuff you never know, but the way it ends up. But I really do try to start with the tune first. You know, um, TV's all over the place. On this show Full Circle, I read the scripts, and they had no idea what they wanted to do musically. So I just kind of had this picture just from reading the scripts, because it's a lot of dialogue.
Right.
There's no exterior stuff, so it's really hard to score dialogue. So my initial conversations were, this has to be something minimal and cerebral and something in people's heads, or otherwise it's going to kind of feel like a soap opera if people are talking and you're scoring all the emotion. So
Right.
I kind of, for that one, I just tried to come up with some sounds that were real minimal, and ended up just being just a bunch of guitars that were all tripped out. And I have a xylophone sitting around here that I never really used too much. And I had a bow, so I ended up bowing the xylophone and using that as kind of this ambient
Oh
sound.
wow.
And
That's
it's kind
cool.
of cool. It's kind of just this sustained, trippy, uncomfortable thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's weird. The further I get into this, it's like I'm a traditional guy, but you can't always do the traditional stuff, or you'll never work. I mean, I love orchestral music. Some of my favorite things I've worked on were just pure orchestral. And you're worried about music. You're worried about notes more than sound. And that's,
Hmm.
if it was a perfect world, that's what I'd love to worry about. But it's not. And you have to be a kind of chameleon. At least me, because I haven't really been pigeonholed yet. And I say that creatively, that's probably a good thing. But career wise, if you are one of those guys that are known for a certain thing, it kind of becomes easier to get called for that certain thing.
Right.
But I'm not going to complain, because I haven't been, I've been able to work on a lot of different stuff.
Well,
But
yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah. But I think it's tough to, it's like, for if you get like, so you're saying that you'd almost prefer to get pigeonholed.
well, no, I'm sure if I were, I'd be complaining about it that I was. So I'm sure if you talk to someone who's known for something, I'm sure Rolf Kent probably never wants to talk about a quirky comedic thing, or Cliff Martinez probably wants to score a comedy because he's tired of being the ambient guy, so the grass is always greener, I'm sure.
Right, right, right.
Uh,
Uh,
so
but
and then to go back to your idea of the sound, this Michael J. Fox thing is, it's a half hour show, so there's only so much you can do. One of the producers for this, when I first came in, he had an idea of this sound. This, he calls it high life. It's kind of this African-y, kind of like Peter Gabriel-ish. But then he likes the sound of Vampire Weekend too, so it's kind of like this hybrid of trying to have some worldish rhythms without so much worldish instruments, with some guitars. So at the end it probably sounds like a rock band, but maybe sounds a little bit like the Police, or a little bit, trying to do
mhm.
some cool guitar-y stuff. And again, anytime you work on something a half hour, it's like, we don't want it to sound like a sitcom, and that's the hardest thing, because it is a sitcom. And
Right.
when you got a 10-second cue, it's really hard to get in and get out without it sounding like a TV thing. So that's always a struggle. It's fun to try to figure it out, but it's hard.
Now, is the Michael J. Fox show, is that a just a single
Yeah.
camera or a three camera?
No, single cam, single cam. So it's shot like a film. And Will Gluck, the EP, is a film guy. I think this is his first TV thing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's unique in also that Will hates composers. he doesn't he doesn't use a composer, like he used a composer on his first film, but his other films since, I don't think he's used a composer. So he hates traditional what a scorer would do. So that's also a challenge, to work on something where they don't necessarily like what the composer does. So you're trying to justify what you do to someone who doesn't like it. But it's been really cool. He's definitely pushed. We've definitely tried some stuff that I probably wouldn't have. And again, I say that the end product probably won't be nearly as different as everyone makes it sound. But we really have tried to as much as possible, not be conventional, even though there's no pizzicato strings or anything like that. I can assure you that.
Right, right.
So
But I mean, you can. I mean, I'm one of my favorite showrunners is Bill Lawrence, and his shows Scrubs and like Cougar Town. They have great music in a 30-minute comedy, and I think it's a really tough thing to make an identifiable sound and make it work.
Absolutely. Yeah, Scrubs, some of those little 3 seconders,
I
that's
know.
tough, man. It's good stuff, but it's hard.
So would you say that it's harder to do a 30-minute comedy like Michael J. Fox or a 1 hour drama like CSI?
I would say comedy a million times harder. Drama, not easy, but it's just, it's more natural to me. And that
Right,
was,
yeah.
was much different and much easier. And as a caveat to that, Wilfred is very dark and dramatic for a half hour. So it's kind of cool. It's
Right.
This season has been like, we sometimes joke that it's the lost of sitcoms because a lot of the music is really like this trippy out there. So it's fun. It's really fun to do. It's hard, but it's fun.
So, well, yeah, for Wilfred, it's interesting because Jim Dooley started that show, and then you came in. So, there was already a soundscape kind of like established. How did you work with that? Did you try to
You know,
redefine it?
yeah, and I'm a fan of Jim. I haven't spoke. I tried to reach out to him when this whole thing went down because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened or what the story was. And you always want to be respectful of someone
Right.
who
Yeah.
came before you. So, you know, um, from what I heard, they wanted to go a different way, and nothing against him.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so when I came in, it was literally they sent me an episode and just say do what you think, and it's hard because he had his sound. So, but I didn't want to just repeat his sound because then what's the point of
Of
getting
course.
someone
Yeah.
else? And I was lucky because the first episode of season two was really dark and big and pretty cinematic, and there was a lot of like, so the first couple scenes I got to try some stuff that wasn't in the palette because they hadn't done anything like that before. So at least that gave me somewhere to start from, that I wasn't just trying to rehash what he did, because I thought his music was great, you know. So it's been a struggle, and I tried to come up with a couple other tunes early in my episodes, so I didn't have to repeat his tune uh, for the rest of the
Right.
series,
Right.
because honestly, I never watched every episode, and I did the same thing with CSI Miami. I didn't watch the earlier episodes because I didn't want to just do what was already done.
Right.
So again, I don't know how different it actually is, but I tried to bring my own take on it as much as I could.
I mean, that's cool. I think it's always interesting. I mean, it happens all the time in the industry where just creative minds think alike and or think differently, and I think it's just always interesting to see how one person fills in for what was already been established. But
Yeah, and again, I think it was easier because from what I can tell, first season of Wilford was much more comedic,
yeah,
and season two went way darker and more into the kind of mystery of it all. So I got to do a lot more mysterious stuff that just wasn't done in the first season.
right,
So
right.
so that made it a little bit easier again. But that's a hard one to do. There's a lot of opinions in that one, so which most of them have.
So, kind of going back to Full Circle, which is Neil LaBute's kind of first time with television, and I mean he's done screenplays and directed, and just from the synopsis, it does. I mean, you're mentioning it almost sounds like a stage play. There's a lot of dialogue. So, as a composer, when you're and as you said, they didn't know what they wanted to do musically. So, how did you know when to score, when to back off, not let the dialogue breathe? Like how did you spot it? How did you know when to do it?
It's been a process, honestly. It's still ongoing,
Yeah.
and what we figured out is some episodes don't have much at all. They break it up into these acts, so it's dessert, it's appetizer, main course, dessert,
Okay.
as it's kind of split up as the conversation goes. So
Right.
some episodes it's really just music to break those parts up, and then as the season's been going on and progressing, some there's more traditional scoring, whereas I just did episode 8, and there was 10 times more dramatic music. In the first few episodes, they're really weary of uh, making it traditional and making it sappy and melodramatic. Everyone's always scared of being melodramatic. I
Right.
find that's a big thing, and I get it, but it's tough because my favorite thing to do is emotional music, but yeah, I mean everyone's really sensitive to it in a lot of projects of not being on the nose and not being sappy. So the first few episodes were definitely a struggle to not score things like that. If there was an emotional scene, not to really hit it over the head. And I think we succeeded. Now I say that I just looked at episode 10, and I just did a 13-minute queue, which was pretty much the longest queue I've ever done in my life, I think.
Wow,
So,
yeah.
uh, but it's pretty sound designing. But there's the last episode gets pretty dark, without giving it away. But it's pretty cool. So well, it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, it does sound like a very interesting experiment. Like I can't wait to. It's gonna. So October 9th on DirecTV is coming out, right?
Yeah, from
Yeah.
what I hear, yeah, it's definitely seems to me like one of those shows that should be Netflixed and watched sequentially, because it's definitely like it's definitely serialized.
Right, right.
To
What?
watch like episode 5 would be absolutely meaningless. So we'll see how they put it out and how they get people to watch, because that seems like the future, to be honest, with all these short series and watching everything sequentially, which
Oh
is
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Which is, I mean, House of Cards. I mean, and Arrested Development coming back. I mean, it's paving the way for the future. I think.
Yeah, and as viewers, I think it's great for us when we get spoiled, but it's hard to go back to watching things the normal way and having to wait a week. I mean, Breaking Bad is killing me having to wait a week now, because I watched the whole 5 seasons in 2 weeks a little bit ago. So
I
it's
know. I remember Lost, and that was torture for 6 seasons. So.
yeah, that was torture even if you watch it in a row. I love it, and I'm a fan, and but that one was frustrating. I wasn't totally satisfied with the ending, but I love it. And then Michael's music was amazing.
Oh, I love Michael so much. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap up, I always like to ask composers this one question. If you could score any film ever made with no disrespect to the original composer or the score, which film would you choose?
Wow. Can you hit pause for a second to delete this big long space? Wow, that's a tough one. I'm going to steer clear of all the John Williamsy stuff, because that's, I'm sure, the obvious answer. Um, but that's tough because I would say I loved Planet of the Apes, but to think of another score of that, uh, of Jerry Goldsmith's, I can't even. That would be too bad to even say that. So
Oh yeah, I mean it's not like to replace the score. It's like if you had that opportunity to do it,
right,
what kind of playground would you love to play in, kind of type thing.
man, that is tough. I will say North by Northwest,
Oh, that's a good one.
because that, if we could set back the clock and we got to write music like that again, that's what I like to do. And I love Alexander Splat now, because he seems to be able to write that small ensemble, uh, not small ensemble, but orchestral music that's not overbearing, that's nuanced, and that
Right.
I think it's amazing, and that's really what I would love to write. And I did a little film that's coming out in November this year called um, A Perfect Man, that I kind of got to do that. I had a 30 string group, and it was very traditional, but hopefully a little bit modern. But I feel like if there's ever something that I wanted to get pigeonholed for, that would be the score that I would like to be. So we'll see what happens. They're trying to rush it out because it's sat on the shelf for like a year and a half, but it's got Liev Schreiber in it, and he's hot now because of Ray Donovan. So IFC is putting it out and hoping to capitalize on his hotness. So hope to release a score for that one soon.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, IFC is doing. Is it going to be like one of those on-demand kind of limited releases?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, right.
Story of my life. Yeah, that seems to be the future. I mean, in the last few years, that's the thing. Limited theatrical VOD, and see what happens.
And I mean, it's better than not getting it out. I mean, I saw Ain't Them Body Saints, and I really loved that film, and I thought Daniel Hart did an amazing job. And it's a shame that it's not getting wider release, but at least it's available, I think, to people that can just go on their TV.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it enables people to find these movies that they wouldn't see. If you're sitting at home and you heard of a movie that week and you could watch it for $7 or whatever. I think it's good. I've watched way more movies than I would if I had to go to the theater every time. So
Right, right,
I think it's good, but it's definitely the future. Where if it's good or bad, I think it's where we're all heading. So
right.
we'll be interested to see.
I mean, I still prefer the theater experience, but it's a nice convenience to have, which is I think what we're going to is convenience.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I love the ArcLight, and it's hard to go anywhere else once you go to the
Oh,
ArcLight.
absolutely.
And you know, every time I get one of these limited theatricals, you're like, oh, I pray that's the ArcLight, but some of them do, some of them don't. So
Yeah.
we'll see where this one ends up.
All right. Well, good luck, and thank you so much for doing this. It was a great pleasure to chat with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I love your site, and thanks for talking.